Hi, everyone, and welcome to K6 Office Hours. If you're wondering why I'm a little bit out of breath, it's because during the countdown, we were dancing. I'm Nicole. I'm
And
joined
I'm
today by.
Simon, as always. And as a guest, we have
Hiya, I'm Marie.
so good
Okay,
to have
so
you on the stream, Mary.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
welcome. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you? What do you do? Why are you here?
So why am I here? No, but yeah, so I'm currently a quality engineering manager at Zoopla. It's a very new role for me. I like this is just my yeah, this is actually the end of my fourth week. So I started off
Mm.
just the 2nd of February. But yeah, previously I was a principal test automation engineer at News UK. I have a blog that I maintain regularly, so you can find my blog posts at mariedrake.com. Most recently as well, I'm an online course instructor, so I have an accessibility course at Test Automation University, and I also have a Cypress course at Ministry of Testing. So I'm a Cypress ambassador. That's why I have those courses. But yeah, I love to talk about test automation in general. I like to share my knowledge around accessibility, around performance, and just general sort of tips on how you can build your personal brand. Yeah, that's me.
Wow, I didn't even know about the courses. Were they hard to make? I'm trying to
Definitely.
find them now so that I can
Yeah,
like
so
link it.
you can find one at Test Automation University. So it was a challenging, but very rewarding task. And I have so much respect now to people who do this on a like full-time basis, because it actually so hard to create, like content out there, let alone like a video course, because like just the time it takes to do the editing, like the recording, like I lost count like how many times I have to re-record again because my daughter Gabby would like say things on the background and it is hard, but I think I got there at the end. So I'm quite proud of the course that I've created, and especially when people you know express their gratitude. They say thank you as to how the course has have helped them. That's really fulfilling. So yeah, make sure you check them out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I found them, so I'm putting them in the comments as well. So the first one is about Cypress. The accessibility testing course, is that also using Cypress or something else, or is it more conceptual?
So it's actually divided into different parts. I know with Test Automation University, they're really focused around using different tools. But when I was creating this course and was submitting my proposal, I really wanted to emphasize that there's no other. I mean that there's no one single best tool out there for accessibility. So I've actually talked about accessibility testing in general, how you can get started with accessibility if your team is not doing it yet. What are the different types of testing that can't be automated? So there were some activities in there where I was using a screen reader. I was using just a keyboard only just to navigate through the website. And then at the end, because it is a test automation course, I use my experience of using Cypress and Cypress X to actually run some basic accessibility tests. So it's a combination of both.
Okay, maybe that's a good time to talk about Cypress. What is Cypress?
Yeah, what
Because
is
I think Simas used it a little bit. I haven't used it at all.
Yeah. So Cypress, yeah, it's pretty much a testing framework. So it's a JavaScript testing framework. First time I heard it I heard about the tool was around 2017, so they were still on beta mode during that time. And then obviously they went public. They released their open source test runner, and then you can also use their paid service for the Cypress dashboard. So in terms of the Cypress test runner, I guess it has the goal to automate like browser related action. So the main goal is really to try to help developers write more automated tests. And when I first started using Cypress, I was quite impressed with how easy it is to get up and running. You just have to install a package via npm, and then you can just easily launch the tests. And then because they have a visual test runner as well, I guess
Mm.
from that perspective it's much easier to actually debug your tests. So I got into it and introduced it to a couple of work projects that I was part of, like previously, and even in my current role now, different teams are also using Cypress. So pretty much you can use it for automating browser tests, but you can also use it for other types of testing.
Okay. So I thought actually that Cypress initially was just a functional testing tool, but I actually watched that talk from you at the Automation Test Guild where you were using it for accessibility. So apparently Cypress can be used for non-functional testing as well.
I mean, so you can. There's no sort of like rule out there that's stopping you, from like using it. But I would, always suggest to think of like what your actual requirements is. So the main reason for me why I wanted to leverage Cypress for accessibility is because our team is already using Cypress, and for me to have that 100% buy-in that we should test for accessibility much earlier on, it
Mm.
should be using a tool that they're already familiar with. So most of us are already familiar with some browser extensions like Axe. If you run Lighthouse audits, it also gives you like some accessibility score. So I decided to search for plugins that can actually integrate with Cypress, and one of them was actually called Cypress Axe, which is based on Axe Core. So the same browser extension that you use to run some Axe audits, it's using the same like library basically. So and that's one of the reason why I integrated it with our tests, because it encourages our developers as well to like for them to think about writing accessibility tests. Yeah.
I really remember. It's funny that you mentioned when they went live in 2017, because
Mhm.
I can remember the exact day when I first got to hear about Cypress, actually, because I was doing a consultancy assignment, developing a application in Angular, and we were
Mhm.
using Selenium and Phantom JS to do that development, and it broke almost daily, and we had to fix
Mhm.
something that, some kind of regression that was introduced. And then one of the QAs at that time came around and said, "Have you heard about Cypress? I just found out about it." So we started converting our tests the same day, and
Yeah.
was like, this is so good. We don't
Yeah.
have to spend all our time on our end-to-end tests anymore. We can just do it and let it run."
Yeah. It is. It is. I think that's one of like the advantages, of using that specific tool, because it's. I don't know if it's just, for example, me, because I've been using JavaScript like very like like lately. I did started on a Java background, but the most recent projects that I've been part of is JavaScript. And because I got used to the syntax, and when you write Cypress test, it's just pretty much like just writing in JavaScript. And it's just really nice to encourage developers to help you out as well with writing the tests. And because it's in the language that they're familiar with, then the buy-in was quite, yeah, it was quite
Mm.
nice. Yeah.
I remember one of the issues we had with Cypress actually, and but that was around 2017, was
Mm-hmm.
that we really needed to be able to test Internet Explorer
Yeah.
11, for instance.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, Cypress is using a some kind of Electron
Yeah.
uh, instance to test, right? Is it still that way, or is the cross-browser support
So
implemented by now?
yeah, so by default, when you run the Cypress tests on like headless mode, it does use the Electron browser.
Mm.
But they do have cross-browser support onto their latest releases, but it's still very
Mhm.
limited. So we all know that it supports Chrome. It now has Firefox and Edge support as well, which is good. But IE 11 and Safari is still not supported. However, having said that, there is an open issue where I think it was updated last month actually, that the Cypress team is actually looking into like trying to support Safari. So and I know that there's other like limitations as well that they're trying to address in like upcoming releases. So it's very exciting to see those.
Yeah, and I mean, regarding IE 11, I kind of feel that maybe we could just, as a community, decide that we're not going to
Yeah.
support this anymore.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you're
it's
on IE
always
11, then you don't get to use our app, and that's how it
yeah.
Yeah.
I
When she
mean,
said
yeah.
I was like, well, that's okay.
Yeah. But I know
is.
that with some companies, they still really have to, support
Mm,
IE11. So I think, yeah, we just need to check the Google Analytics, to see like how
Hmm.
many users we have on particular browser. And, I mean, if you must really, support IE11, there's no, like hard rule stopping you that you can't use other tools as well. So I know people who have, mentioned that they have like most of their tests running on Cypress, and then at the same time, because they still have support around IE, they have like a subset of tests that they use like using Selenium, or the approach that we took actually. So this was on my previous role as a principal test automation engineer, was we leverage visual testing instead.
mm,
So because when we were testing like the different websites manually, we found out that most of the issues were really visual and not on the functional side. So it got us into thinking what can we do to make sure that we still have some test coverage around IE11 now that we're using Cypress. So we decided to add visual testing on the mix as well.
mm.
I really love what you said earlier about getting buy-in from developers too, because I think that that's something that Cypress and K6 have in common.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have been in projects where I was writing the load tests in JMeter, and I was just a consultant, so I knew that I was going to be on another project the next week, and I was trying to get the developers to, maintain it or contribute to it. And they were like, so you want us to learn this new tool that we'll only ever use for this one thing?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of get it, like it's a barrier to entry. If
Yeah.
it's JavaScript and they're already programming in JavaScript, like it's just so much easier. So I
Yeah.
imagine it's the same for Cypress.
Yeah. And now that you mention it, so when I wrote my blog post around like introduction to K6 as well, like last year, I actually wrote there as well that K6 is like Cypress, but obviously for like load testing, because I've never encountered like a performance tool out there where it's actually it's written in a different language, but you write the test in JavaScript, and it was just different from the other tools that I have encountered with. I'm not sure if there's any other tool where you actually write the test using JavaScript. I don't know, like in terms of like performance testing, but when I was playing around with K6 last year, yeah, I found that yeah, it was quite easy, yeah, to learn. And having, just to write like a simple, code, where you just import, the methods that you need, and then because it's quite familiar in terms of the syntax of, how you structure your tests, it was quite easy to sort of pick up.
I think there are other tools that can be used for load testing that you can script in JavaScript
Mm,
with, but I think that those really are more geared towards the functional side and not the load
mhm.
testing. So I
Yeah.
think K6 is pretty unique in that way. And I think that I don't know if you two agree, but I actually think that there's a fundamental difference in approaches to writing a functional test script and a non-functional or load testing script.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, especially because, with the like front end performance testing side, you don't necessarily care as to, for example, how many users would, access your site simultaneously. It's more on the perspective of, one user, like how fast the response time is for, for an individual user. So yeah, I guess yeah, it's a very different way of, like thinking on how you structure your test between the front end and the back end performance testing.
Yeah, and especially with K6, that becomes really clear because I know we have some skunk works in the making where we're trying to add browser testing in some to some extent as well. But that aside, if we look at K6 right now today, then we really don't even know what the DOM is. We have no idea what the data we get will look when it's rendered, right? So
Mhm.
it's really not at all in the same domain as the
Yeah,
functional testing in that sense. Because the Cypress, as you mentioned, is great also for doing things like visual regression testing and things like that. And K6 wouldn't be able to do that at this point.
I
yeah.
think I was thinking when you said that, Sima, that we should have like a little video clip. You know the rainbow stripes that says technical difficulties. You mentioned our super secret project. No, but also I wanted to say that like with functional testing, I know that the point is not to automate everything,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
But I think the coverage is still way broader than a load testing script would be,
Mm.
because with load testing, we don't really want to try every single combination.
Yeah.
It's only the ones that get the most traffic.
Yep. Yeah. That's 100%. Yeah. True. I completely agree with that.
So have you tried Selenium?
I have, yeah. So when I started off, my journey into being a technical test engineer, so I was actually working as a consultant. So being, put into different projects and, like trying to write tests on, different programming languages. So the best option, like for me, was to obviously use Selenium because it has different support for mostly like every programming language out there. So I've used it, using, Java and then using in C sharp. And yep, it's, I think when most of us as well started to transition to becoming more of like a test automation engineer, then, we all look at, at Selenium as, as our first go-to, tool because it's an industry standard, tool that, everyone is like familiar with.
What do you really think of it?
I mean, yeah, I think for me it's really like project and context dependent. So because
Wow,
as I
she's so nice.
mentioned, so because as I mentioned, the projects that I've been working on is mainly on the JavaScript side, and my sort of view is, writing the automation test should be shared by the whole team and not just a particular QA team. So I guess it makes sense, to use something that's more developer friendly, but at the same time, I'm not saying that like Selenium is not developer friendly. It would just take Nicole. It would take, obviously a lot of collaboration between, the QA and the developer. And if you're using, or if you have requirements to, make sure that you have support for IE 11, or, you need to address, testing on, I guess, multiple tabs, if you really have a specific requirements for those, then, Selenium would be a great alternative, because I think what we're sort of not talking about here the most is there is not one best tool that can solve everything. So it is pretty much, project dependent. You need to take into consideration the skill set of your team, which responsibility is it, to write the test. And if you have the answer for those, then those are good steps to, start picking a tool.
Mhm.
So in some cases, Selenium would be a good choice for me. So say for example, I got moved into a project where it wasn't, I guess, on a JavaScript base, and in terms of the skill set, they just need someone that can really help them up and running. Then yep, maybe Selenium I'll, use in that case. But if it's, I guess, on a project where, they're using different JavaScript frameworks, the team is quite mature, the developers are eager to also help, then I would, pick Cypress in that case.
What do you think,
Um,
Simme?
well, I'm still trying to wrap my head around someone saying that they would choose Selenium for anything, right? No offense to all the Selenium lovers out there. But I just remember it being so cumbersome. It's probably come a long way since, but it was just so fragile at that point, at least. It might also be that we weren't, as a team, that mature when it came to writing UI tests or end-to-end tests. So we really struggled with that, and it felt like when we went over to Cypress, that all disappeared because we didn't have to, add artificial wait times to account for loading times for the server and things like that. That was just kind of handled for us, which made a lot of sense to us, at least. But as you say, it's really, really hard to pick one superior tool, and the same goes for load testing as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume that if we were to send Nicole on some kind of assignment for a customer, then I would assume that she might consider using JMeter for that, given her prior experience with JMeter. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. It's really good that we try to keep track of different technology, and that we try to stay
Yeah.
current and find the best tool for the situation we're in. Otherwise, the old saying that if all you have is a hammer, every problem is
Mhm.
a nail, that will become really, really true in that case. And I don't think that's at least not what I'm looking for when I'm trying to do something.
Pick a tool. Yeah. And I think so, because you mentioned that, like, obviously, like your experience with Selenium before, it was, flaky. I remember watching this Meetup talk by Angie, where she basically showed, like what's new in like Selenium 4. And I haven't played with Selenium 4, but I, from seeing that talk, they have released like a lot of like new features that weren't on the previous releases. So I think, yeah, as we all, I guess, mature in terms of like the tooling, our automation strategies, I think a lot of the different tools will also naturally, mature, and it will become, I guess, much better for like everyone's needs. So yeah.
Yeah, and now
To
that
be
almost all tools are using the same JavaScript engines and the same rendering engines, more or less, it's really not that different anymore either. Because I mean, previously, one of the things that could make the flakiness or could contribute to the flakiness were the fact that if you were, for instance, testing for IE 11, then all bets were off. You had no idea what you were going into, right? But now that everything is running WebKit almost,
Yeah.
then we have a whole different situation where we can consistently test across multiple browsers, and we don't need to pick a tool that performs especially well for one browser that we're interested in.
Yeah.
To be fair to Selenium, um, I'm not a fan. But to be fair, my experience with Selenium has been mostly in using Selenium as a load testing tool. So actually wrapping it up in a container and replicating it across multiple load generators. And I just haven't had a great experience with it. But that's not what it's made for, right?
Mhm.
It's I'm really stretching, pushing the boundaries. That really. So I think it's basically unfair for me to
Yeah.
judge it that harshly. I do think though when it came out, and I was researching like when tools were first released, and Selenium came out in 2004. That was
Mm.
17 years ago. And at that
Mm.
time, I remember when it came out that like it was either that or like what would they use? The what do you call it? The HP one, then
Yeah,
HP.
I came from HP
Uh
ALM prior
Yeah.
to
yeah.
Selenium, and that was a horrible
What is
experience
it
in
called?
comparison.
What's the automation tool? It's escaping me. So it was a proprietary
Yeah.
tool.
I,
And
I
so
I know what
Selenium
you're
came
talking
in
about. Yeah.
and it was so much better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is, I think this is the thing that we just, have to sort of remember. Like, for example, now I'm using Cypress, but it doesn't mean that I'm 100% going to use it all the time because, there's so many tools that are being created at the moment. So it could be that, I don't know, after like 3 to 5 years, there's another, new tool. So it's all really changing. And I did remember because when I actually did this talk with my colleague Giri Dar, so we actually organized the Cypress UK community meetup group, and one of the talk that I sort of collaborated with him was around when to choose Selenium, when to choose Cypress. And one of the key things that we sort of mentioned was the main goal of Selenium was to really just automate the browser. And if you're trying to use it for any other things, then that's, I think that's one of, I guess, the like the misabuse of like trying to use a specific tool. So if it was like created for like testing the browser, but then we're like using it for like other things, then I guess that's probably why some people's experience are not so good.
Mm.
But then again, yeah, like who knows, like maybe 3 to 5 years there's another amazing tool that's gonna
Mm.
that's gonna come. Yeah.
It was Quick Test Pro, QTP.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Ah.
Yes, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. The
yeah.
record and playback.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
remember
I
trying to
would
test MoveX or M3 using that back in the day, and it was just horrible, and everything was served through Java servlets and things like that. And
Yeah.
how do you even automate against that? It was just so hard. We never finished that project, to be honest.
I
so
remember I was actually enrolled in, I think it was a 3-day course back when I was starting off as a test consultant. And it was how to use QTP. And I don't know. I was just so confused because you have to script it. I think it was VB script during that time, and it was just so confusing for me. So during that time when I was starting to learn, how to use Selenium, I was like, this is so much easier compared
Mm.
to this, 3-day course that I was, part of. Yeah.
Did
you
the
know what I'm
QTP even
impressed
have?
by?
Sorry, Nicole, go.
Sorry, go on.
Did
This
QTP
happens every
even
time.
have XPath selectors and things like that? I don't think so, right? It was like pixel-based coordinates
Oh
for the
I don't
man,
automation, right?
remember. Yeah.
I don't remember. Um, but you know what I am impressed by? It's not Selenium WebDriver, it's Selenium IDE. I'm
Mm.
actually a pretty big fan of IDE because
Yeah.
it's like a browser extension and you can write pretty complicated test suites with
Mm.
it.
I think especially because I mean, before the Selenium IDE was just really used in as an extension in Firefox, and to be fair, when it was first released, it was still very limited. You can't use, like some intelligent selectors, and you can't even do like complex scenarios. You can't run it on your CI/CD pipeline. But I think now that they've revamped it, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Tools who actually revamped Selenium IDE. So now you can also use it as a
Mm.
Chrome extension. You can run it as part of your, CI pipeline. And it's just, yeah. I've only used the new version, once when I was playing around with it before, and if I compare it to my first experience of using Selenium IDE back then, it's way better. Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that maybe we should talk about why we're talking about automation testing on a load testing channel. um, Maybe like let's take a step back. So why do you think it's important to test with browsers? Because K6 can to some degree already be used for functional testing. So we mainly API functional testing. But why do you think browsers are still important?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, our
By the
users,
way.
like our end users, they use the browser to do all the things that they want to do on your application. So I agree that we should all have appropriate tests on different levels, but at the same time we should also make sure that we're also verifying like some of the core, like end-to-end journeys that our end users like come across. And I think that's why like browser-based automation tests are still very important, because and it doesn't matter what tool you're using. If your customers experience, like for example, an issue that, I don't know, they can't add items into their cart, or they can't save a form, then it totally like disregards like the value that we're trying to provide. So by having a strong end-to-end tests that are driven via the browser, and not a lot of it, because we all know that a lot of end-to-end tests can be time consuming. It's quite very expensive to run. So it's good to have like the key like journeys automated, just so that we can verify that whenever we do releases, that some of the core journeys are still not affected and is still working as expected. Yeah.
I think that there are some really convincing use cases for going to browser testing. One is not every application now can actually be tested at the protocol level. There's already single page apps where there's just so much JavaScript and like other scripts that are firing off on the client side that don't actually produce requests to the server, but that's still a very big part of the user experience. So it should be part of performance testing.
Yeah.
And then another thing is, even for those applications where you can test it at a protocol level, sometimes because of increased security, which I'm all for, um, it adds complexity.
Mm,
So, like now we see these dynamic view states that are generated that you have to correlate from the previous request. In those cases, it can be just easier to use a
mm,
functional testing tool,
yeah.
right? And then the other thing that I can see is what you're talking about, where I know that you've demonstrated how Cypress can be used to capture Lighthouse metrics, so front end performance metrics. I really love that part of it. Can you tell us more about that?
Yep. So again, because we're already using Cypress, I was sort of looking at what other plugins to integrate. And when I found out that there is actually a Lighthouse plugin that you can just easily integrate to Cypress, I decided to give a try because one of the work that we're trying to solve, and this was in my previous role, was we need to make sure that we can capture some basic Lighthouse, some Lighthouse performance checks every time we do releases. So we were thinking of maybe just using the Lighthouse CLI. So we have like a couple of options that we have like tried to explore, and I was just curious as well during that time because it was a brand new plugin, and it's using Lighthouse as its core library as well. So essentially the same extension that you see, the same thing that runs on Google Chrome. So it's actually driven by that. And the good thing is you can just install it easily in your Cypress test. So yep, it will basically expose some additional commands for you, like side at Lighthouse, and then you can pass in like for example what are the thresholds that, for example, you want to sort of set up. So you can set up, okay, if the accessibility is below this threshold, then fail this test. If the performance is below this, or even if you want to track like specific metrics like the cumulative layout shift or the like first contentful paint, then you can also drive that from your test, so you can easily track what metric your Lighthouse scores are on like every feature that developers are trying to merge. So it was just, yeah, like a really cool plugin that I found out about it, and I decided to talk about it, like you know spread the word, so that the other like engineers can also use it. Yeah.
So is everything in the Lighthouse suite available, or can you get any of those metrics in Cypress?
Yep. So, pretty much the metrics that you see, for example, when you run a Lighthouse audit, it that you can also see the same, not the same report, but you can also see the same metrics being tracked when you
Mm.
use this plugin in your Cypress test. And you can really be more specific. So, for example, if you only want to track some key particular metrics like first contentful paint, large contentful paint, you can just filter it by those, and the test will just actually run it against those metrics, and if it reach the threshold that you have specified, then it will either fail or pass. So yep, pretty much the same metrics that you see on the Lighthouse extension, on the Lighthouse CLI, you can also see it from the Lighthouse plugin
Wow,
in Cypress. Yeah.
that's so cool. I think that you should just be doing everyone should just be doing that all the time. I mean, like to get those metrics, I feel like it wasn't so long ago where this area was just completely like a black box. You don't really know how it renders on
Yeah.
a client's web browser.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should
That's
implement this for
amazing.
your GitHub pages, Nicole, so you can measure
We
whether your
can
blog
track it.
performs.
Yeah.
What he's talking about. He laughs at me because I recently discovered that K6 can be integrates with GitHub Actions, and I
Mm,
have my site, my like personal website on GitHub Pages, and so I now have a GitHub action that runs a K6 test every time I commit. I push a commit.
that's
And
cool.
it's
Yeah.
funny because it's so overkill because it's on GitHub Pages, right? So,
But it works. I think that's the important thing.
yeah.
It works.
I mean,
Yeah, it
sometimes
makes
it's
sense.
not about like all the huge load tests. It's about how cool it is to just have like a handful of users doing it all the time. And now I have a nice graph where I can see like on a regular basis whether my site is doing okay or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just as we, for myself, I guess you have the same problem as well, Nicole, that you kind of need to find these use cases to motivate all the time you sink into trying things that you can't make immediate use of, right? So if you, for instance, say, "Oh, maybe I should load test my my blog on GitHub pages," then you have a clear use case where you can put in that
Yeah.
effort and get something out of it. How
Yeah.
even though it's unlikely that you will never ever hit those performance thresholds, I guess, or at least for me it would be.
Ooh, Danielle is saying GitHub is our biggest user.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think like Maria and I are actually doing a talk. Oh, by the way, we should tell people
Ah,
about
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I need to find
I
the link.
is it 23rd of March? I can't
Yes,
remember.
23rd
23rd
of
of March.
March. Well,
Yeah.
we'll just find the link. Maria and I are doing this. We really planned this well, huh? Maria and I are doing a talk. It is the Ministry of Testing meetup for the Philippine branch, but I mean anyone can go. We're
Gonna
not
be-
speaking in Taglish
No,
or
we have to speak
Tagalog,
in
right?
English. Yeah.
English speakers. No, I'm just joking. Of course, I'm just joking.
Yeah.
Okay, here is the link to the meetup event.
Mm.
Why did I bring this up? Oh, because we had this idea. So it's about performance testing. Marie's doing like the front end performance part with Cypress and Lighthouse, and I'm doing the back end performance part with K6. And we thought it would be cool to be using the same application so
Okay,
she
back
could script against the same thing that I'm scripting against. And I we could have really used anything, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna deploy this like microservices demo, and I'll do it on on Google Cloud and use Kubernetes. And by the way, I don't know how to do these things, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah, you still have, is it 2 more weeks? Yeah.
Hey, it's up. It's up. It doesn't have SSL, but it's up. It's functional.
That's cool.
And
Yeah.
we're not really using it for that. It's
Yeah.
like it's in a cluster. I did that.
Speaking of finding use cases for your experiments that you want to do.
Yeah, that's what reminded me of it. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't really necessary,
But
but
it's cool.
why not?
That's
Cool. Yeah. And you can
Yeah.
blog about it as well.
yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. I need to learn this, or I want to learn this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
And it I think is more. Whoa,
I
did you do that,
that's
Simon? How
Yes,
did
I
yeah,
you
did
do it?
that.
That's
that's
So
really
awesome.
awesome. Yeah.
if you want to
I
sign
mean,
up, use that link. I haven't signed up yet, but
I think
it's
it's
likely
shame.
to be really good. I mean, I've seen
uh
both of you present
I
before,
think
and it's usually
yeah. So I think it's actually full already, but maybe we can speak to because the last time I checked the event, it was already 150 people. I don't know
Oh,
if Anthony wants to
yeah.
increase it,
Oh,
but yeah, it's
okay,
actually
maybe not.
quite
Don't
um
join it. It's probably
yeah.
not going to be good.
I know, but it's really nice that a lot of people have like signed up because it was only announced, is it a week ago, and
mm.
then 150 people have already signed up, so that's really nice.
Yeah,
I'm
that's more
joking,
than
of
many
course.
of the that's more than many of the virtual conferences get these days. So it's really huge if you have 150
Yeah,
registered
but I'm
participants.
sure, yeah, like only half like probably will
Yeah,
attend, and then the
Yeah.
rest will watch the
quarter.
recording, but still it's it's a really good number. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we will, like tweet out the recording.
Yeah.
But I think it just goes to show how many people are interested in this, and I'm really excited because I feel like not too long ago, when people thought performance testing, they go automatically to load testing. But
Yeah.
that's such a small part of what performance is. We're
Mhm.
not just like front end and back end, and front end, I think, doesn't get enough credit. because
Mhm.
actually there are a lot of issues that you can fix that don't have to do with the traffic. I think that you really need to tweak both sides of the puzzle if you care about the end-to-end performance. And I would count things like disaster recovery or whatever as other parts of performance as well that don't always have something to do with load testing.
Yeah.
I mean, what good is a API that can serve 100,000 concurrent users in less than 200 ms per request if it takes 2 seconds until the JavaScript framework that you're using in your front end is even loaded into memory and bootstrapped to the page.
Yeah.
Uh,
That is,
That's
yeah.
so
why I loved your accessibility talk, Marie, with Cypress, because I I am ashamed to admit that I don't know that much about accessibility testing, and I did not know that Cypress could be used in that way. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So again, it's just a simple plugin, that you can add, and it exposes commands as well that you can use on top of like the existing Cypress commands. And if you're just planning to like audit, let's say maybe a homepage or like a particular page, um, the most default setup that you can do is actually just introduce two commands. So that's sci dot I think it's sci dot inject acts, and then sci that run accessibility, and that's it. After that, you get results as to like how many violations your page has. It can track basic like violations like color contrast, if it doesn't have the alt text attributes, just like the basic one. So at least whenever you're actually doing accessibility testing, you can have that confidence that okay, you don't have to check for, I guess, the basic audit, but just focus on the actual type of testing that can't be automated, like just using your keyboard. And you'll actually be surprised how many accessibility issues you can find just by using your keyboard. It's it's not really the best tool, but it is one of the really great tool out there for accessibility. Just use your keyboard, don't use your mouse, and then see if you can use the same way that you
mm,
can use your website. But yeah, it's a great plugin, and if you can just easily integrate it and run it on your like CI and CD pipeline, then the other teams or your developers, they can have that visibility that, oh hey, we've introduced some new like violations, we should fix this before merging it to our
mm.
main or to our develop branches.
So, what's the difference between accessibility and usability?
Yeah. So usability really is making sure that a product or an application is usable by everyone, whereas accessibility is focused more on people who have like disabilities. So it's really it's like a subset of like usability. And I guess a lot of people often interchange that because it can be quite confusing, but actually accessibility is part of usability. So if
Mm.
for example some of your features are not accessible, then you can also say that it's not usable because it's like a subset of it. And if we look at using inclusive design, there's this really great guideline from Microsoft where if you design for people with disability, whether it's permanent, whether it's temporary, or whether it's like situational, then you basically design like for everyone. Because I actually remember I had this really bad sprain, like on my wrist, and it was so hard to use a mouse. And that wasn't a permanent disability, but it's like a temporary. So just making sure that I can still use the keyboard, or use like other features that doesn't involve using the mouse, it's like a great help as well.
Mm.
um And what I like about, like trying to focus on accessibility and usability is, for example, some situations that, people might think, oh, it's fine, we don't have to design for, for this, we don't have a lot of, users with disabilities. But then, if you think about it, like, say, for example, if you're a working mom, like you're carrying your toddler on one hand and then you're trying to use like another gadget. So you only really have one hand to use. And if we have a product that can, support that like situation, then, that can be usable like by, by everyone. So yeah, I think, yeah. There's a lot of work that still needs to be obviously done, but I like that, especially with the projects that I've been on. I can see that, there's been a great interest, on like trying to make their products accessible. So I think they are, like being aware that it is an important, yeah, like feature. And yeah, I'm just babbling, but yeah.
No, we do that all the time. I mean, don't you know? This is like an hour of Sim and me babbling. I thought you knew what you were signing up for.
It's a good
No,
topic. Like I can probably talk
yeah.
about it again, but it is a really good like area to like focus on.
At least
One of the
both of you are still speaking English. I mean, I was a little bit worried that you might switch over to Filipino, and I
O
would just
sige,
sit there like.
mag-Tagalog na nga tayo. Ano ba
Ay
sasabihin
nako.
natin? No, no, no.
Ayan na, mag-Tagalog na. Yeah.
No, I really love about your talk that you had like I feel like such a fangirl now. Like you should have seen my conversation with Sime during your talk. I was like, oh my god, she's Filipino and she's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I love that you had captions on your
Mm,
talk,
yeah.
and I think captions really are a good proof of what you also said, that accessibility might initially be for people with disabilities, but it definitely can help other people too, even if you don't have disabilities. So I
Yeah.
don't have any hearing disability, but I'm always trying to learn languages.
Mhm.
So I having captions on it on a video on YouTube really means a difference to me. Like
Yeah.
whether I watch it at all or not.
Yeah. I
No, but
think
also, sorry. Go ahead,
no,
Marie.
go on,
No,
Sime.
it was nothing important. I'm just babbling.
I was just gonna add like I like the whole caption thing. It's actually like one of my favorite accessibility feature. So I have a loud toddler at home, and like sometimes she would just sing like randomly. So if I'm trying to watch something, it's really hard to hear what is being said. So if I just put subtitles or like the captions on, at least even if I can't hear them speaking, I can just read it. So it's a really great feature.
Yeah, and also for
Yeah.
us that are not in native English speakers as well, I think. I mean, uh, I usually have no problem hearing what people are saying when they speak English, but some dialects might be harder to
Yeah.
understand, for instance. And if I have closed captions when I'm looking at a talk, for
Yeah.
instance, then reading it usually is no problem at all. But it might
Yeah.
be hard to, for instance, I did a meetup in. MOT Cork.
Mm.
And when I first joined and talked to the organizer, I was like, "How am I supposed to be able to do this? Because I have no clue what Connor is saying." But
Oh,
it
the
took like
accent.
5 minutes or so, and then I was totally fine. But it was hard, right? Especially
Mm.
if you're used to talk for English, for instance, American English, and you go
Yeah.
to Ireland or Scotland and speak to someone with a heavy accent, then it's really,
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah.
I also really like Kindle's immersion feature, where you're reading something in text, but you can, if you buy the audiobook, they can sync up so it's playing at the same time, and it
Mm.
highlights word for word while you're listening to the audio. I think that it was originally developed for accessibility purposes, but
Mm.
I use it all the time for language
Yeah.
learning. It's
Well,
the
that's
best feature.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, with the whole inclusive design principle, like, if we just look at, like, it's not even something to do with technology, but if we look at, let's say, like, road curbs, like, they were designed for, people who need to access it if they're on a wheelchair, or, if
Mhm.
they need to, like, use it. But, like, for me, I don't, like, even recognize that they were initially first created for people with disabilities, because I use them all the time, especially if I'm out and if I have, the buggy, like if I'm pushing my daughter on, the buggy, it just makes it so easier. And, like, I think, yeah, that's just the like, main principle of it is, if you just design for, inclusivity, then you basically design for everyone. Yeah.
Mm.
I think too that there's a lot to check in accessibility testing, and there are a few things that are like that you can automate basically. So it makes sense to have to kind of offload all of those activities to an automation tool, and
Yeah.
then you can do the things that cannot be automated.
Yeah.
But I think I mean, Cypress is amazing that it can do something like this. I mean, isn't that the ideal to have? Well, I don't think any tool is quite there yet, but I can't wait for a future where there is one tool that developers will use for unit tests, functional testers will use for their tests. It tests that can be automated and then used for accessibility and localization, and then all the performance stuff, front end and back end. I mean,
Mhm.
that's the dream, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
it's like a universal remote.
So what we want is the Logitech Harmony of load testing tool of tools,
No,
testing
because
tools.
because that user experience was horrible. So
Really?
I would not like the Harmony experience.
I thought it was pretty good.
We bought one and used it for a week, I think, but that was probably towards the end of that era, because then all the voice assistants came, and then it felt quite dated quite fast. Uh,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking from a developer perspective as well, that being able to have all these automatic tests running all the time, both for accessibility and for performance and for unit testing as well, and just having them run automatically every time you save a change to your code, that's
Mm,
really a way to make developers aware of the issues that their code might introduce and have them handle them immediately instead of having them impact users, as is
yeah.
usually the case. So I'm very pro all kinds of automation that allows me to
Yeah.
develop faster and with
Yeah.
more quality, for
Yeah.
sure.
You mean like my GitHub actions?
Especially that one.
Especially.
Hey, can I actually use Cypress as well with GitHub actions?
You can, yeah. I think there is,
Hmm.
yeah. I haven't checked, but I know that Gleb has, blogged about it.
Who?
And
Glenn?
Gleb, Gleb. So
Glev.
he's the distinguished engineer at, at Cypress. And if you go to his blog post, I think he writes, I don't know, every day. Like, he just has new content every day. And yeah, and
Awesome.
yeah, I think there is a meetup as well about, yeah, GitHub actions, if I'm not mistaken. But I haven't used it personally. Yeah.
So it's Gleb Bamutov,
Gleb,
right?
yeah.
I'm just trying to find his site. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is something that I would absolutely do. Does it do any sort of localization? Yeah, localization testing if you have your site translated.
Yeah, so I remember this question was being asked on our Cypress Ambassador channel. And because I don't have experience yet with, doing localization testing, I don't actually know how to do it in Cypress, but I know that someone has, asked about it. And I actually forgot what, the outcome is on that thread. But I'm not 100% sure if, if Cypress can do localization testing, because personally I haven't come across it.
We did that at one point, actually.
How was
So
your
what you
experience?
can do is that
With
if you, for
Cypress?
instance, yeah, if you, for instance, are using a framework like Angular or React, then usually when you include translations or you include localization, then you can have some kind of substitute string being printed if translations are missing. So,
Mm,
say for instance that you have a new word on one
Mm.
page that you haven't yet translated, then you can have that print not translated, and then in Cypress you could just check all the pages for
Mm.
the phrase not translated, and if you find any of those, then you just fail the test. So that
mm,
actually works quite well.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to do. I wanna look into that actually. Again, I'm going to have like
You're gonna make
multiple
it
translations
complicated
on my
again.
site.
Yeah.
It's basically just a playground for me.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I think the important thing is like, we're learning new skills, and it's always good to learn like new technical skills.
Mm.
Okay, well, I'm gonna take a leaf out of Joe Colantonio's book and ask the final question.
Oh yeah.
What's one piece of actionable advice that you would say to a tester?
Um,
It's a good
don't
one.
Yeah, you should have done it with the same, voice and everything. But
I
um
can't. Da, 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 da.
yeah, I don't want to give the same advice for that because I want something different. But maybe it's, don't underplay your achievements. And I think because I was reading this, not reading, sorry, I saw this tweet um yesterday evening about, that the number one self-distracting habit that we all have is we always try to compare ourselves with other people. Because I get messages like, oh, how did you, do all of this, like I want to do the same thing. And I think, rather than like, if you focus yourself by comparing yourself to others, then you're basically just like underplaying like what you've achieved. So, make sure that you focus on like the value that you provided. So it's really up to you to build consistent habits. So if you want to learn how to become more technical in terms of your skills, then there's a lot of resources out there. And it's actually quite a good thing because most of the resources are now for free, which is really good.
Yeah,
So it's really up to you. And then if you have achieved something, show it off, like post about it, write a blog. And I think we're so like focused on like underplaying that, oh yeah, I've done this, but it's not that good. But if you just advocate for your own achievements, then I think it makes you a better tester because you get to network with other people, you get to learn more, you get exposed to different types of, I guess, like networking activities as well. And there's always a lot of things to learn. So yeah, if there's a new advice that I would like to give, it would probably that. Yeah, like don't compare yourself to others, and yeah, don't underplay your achievements as well.
Mm.
that's such great advice, and I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
I definitely think that everybody, no matter what stage you're in your career, at some point you compare yourselves to those who are better, but there will always be someone better. And instead of trying to be more like them, I think it's much more productive to just keep learning.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the old saying that if you ever find yourself being the smartest person in the room, then it's time to change rooms.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's always good to be an underdog because then you'll have more to learn than those who
Yeah.
already feel accomplished and done with their learning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and on that note, I see that we're up to 1 hour and 4 minutes now, so we
We made
probably
it.
need to let you go, Mary, and then not take any more of your precious Friday
Friday
hours.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
My friend is actually texting me if I'm available. So
Okay,
So
okay.
before we end, I just like to make a couple of quick requests to all the watchers out there. If you haven't already, make sure to go to Marie's Twitter and subscribe or follow her, so you'll make sure that you don't miss out on any new cool Cypress related stuff. Uh, and other than that, make sure that you subscribe to our live stream so you don't miss the next time we go live. And if you know someone that would be interested in watching this live stream, feel free to send a link to them, because we're slowly growing, but we'd definitely like to reach a larger audience. Uh, yeah, and if you'd like to come on as a guest at some point, just send us a PM on Twitter, and we'll make sure to get back to you. So with that said, thank you so much, Marie,
thank
for coming on the
you.
show.
Yeah,
It
this
was a
has been
blast,
so
really.
much fun, and thank you again for for inviting me. This was a fun way to end, Friday.
You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
And thanks to everyone who's been watching, and enjoy your Friday, and see you next week.
Bye,
Bye. Thank
everyone.
you.